Welcome to this special investigation on Local 3 News. I'm John Truitt. It's been nearly a month since Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital closed. In that time, I have been talking with residents and local officials about life in a community with no hospital and no emergency room. Before we begin, we want to tell you that we have reached out to Aspirus numerous times while covering this story. We have yet to receive any response. At midnight on April 19, 2024, the residents of Ontonagon County began living a nightmare. Their community hospital, the only emergency department within an hour's drive, closed, without any further comment from Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital. Aspirus announced the closure in a press release, just days after assuring a United States congressman the rumors of an impending closure were false. The announcement gave local residents just 60 days to desperately come up with a solution. The press release was the single piece of information given to the community. Aspirus has said nothing publicly since. The residents of Ontonagon feel misled, betrayed, and abandoned by a company that only 2 years ago announced plans to build a new $15.8 million hospital. Residents I spoke to are terrified. Is it a complete betrayal?
Oh, completely. I never, ever saw this coming. And we all feel blindsided. We were just in shock when they made the announcement that in 60 days they would be closing, and no further comment. And I don't think any of us saw it happening. We're just devastated, feeling very betrayed and just devastated.
It made me feel pretty bad because we got a lot of health problems. Everybody got a lot of health problems. And we need people around. We need a hospital. We need an emergency room. We need everything. Yeah. It's like hurting everybody.
I'm just appalled. I'm really appalled. I just can't understand it. Somebody's not thinking.
With a population of nearly 6,000, Ontonagon County is the third largest by area, so driving long distances is a part of life. But having to travel 47 miles to the nearest emergency room, well, that's just too far.
And under the best circumstances, say it's 48 miles away, if the ambulance was right with you when you had your event,
you'd still have 48 minutes.
You'd still have 48 minutes, but they won't be. And there'll be bad weather, and there'll be times when the ambulances aren't available.
Prior to the announcement of Aspirus closing its doors, rumors started circulating about the possible closure of Ontonagon's hospital. With pressure from U.S. Congressman Jack Bergman, Michigan State Senator Ed McBroom, and State Rep Greg Markinen, Aspirus agreed to meet with local officials. Emergency Manager and 911 Director Mike Coker attended that meeting.
We were told that that was a bad rumor and we ought not spread that. 5-6 days later, after we had one of our elected officials call Wausau Aspirus to ask about that rumor, he was also told that it is false. Ontonagon will not close. 5-6 days later, we all officially got the notice that Ontonagon would be closing within 60 days.
Ontonagon County has a population average of well over 60. With a struggling economy and loss of jobs, Ontonagon may be losing even more. If people feel unsafe in their own homes, with medical conditions or young children, many will have no choice but to leave for a more secure environment.
There's a lot of older people here. There's a lot of retired people. There's a lot of people on Social Security. A lot of folks that have owned their house for a long time. And I know some of them are probably thinking they don't want to stay here anymore because there isn't an ER available, and I think that's just shame. It's a shame.
In Ontonagon, John Truitt, Local 3 News. After the break, we continue our investigation into the events leading up to the closing of Ontonagon's emergency room. In part 2 of our series on Aspirus's decision to close its hospital and its emergency department, I break down how people in the community learned of the news and how local leaders tried so far unsuccessfully to get Aspirus to change its mind. This past winter may have been a mild one, but in Ontonagon, a storm was brewing. Ontonagon County emergency officials tell us they first started hearing about the possible closure of Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital over the winter. They say employees were questioning whether to purchase property or make long-term investments in the community, having known for some time that their hospital was underperforming. These rumors got the attention of the sheriff and the emergency 911 director, Mike Coker. Well before the closure announcement, Coker's calls to Aspirus were not being returned until Coker asked for State Representative Greg Markkanen to intercede. Coker says Aspirus then told Markkanen, along with Ontonagon Sheriff Dale Rantala and Coker himself, that the rumors were false.
We were told that that was a bad rumor and we ought not spread that. 5-6 days later, after we had one of our elected officials call Wausau Aspirus to ask about that rumor, he was also told that it is false. Ontonagon will not close. 5-6 days later, we all officially got the notice that Ontonagon would be closing within 60 days.
Announcing the permanent closure of Ontonagon's emergency department just days after assuring everyone that it would not close does not sit well with lawmakers and local officials. I caught up to State Senator Ed McBroom on his way to work in Lansing. He says lawmakers were misled. As little as 2 weeks prior to the announcement of the closure, they urged you not to proliferate any rumors, as they called it, that the hospital would close.
Well, as a matter of fact, Representative Markkanen spoke to them less than 4 or 5 days before the closure announcement, and they assured him that it wasn't happening. So it's really very frustrating because they clearly were lying at that point. They have not been acting in good faith at this point.
The announcement of the closure in part reads, quote, "In addition to the improvements to Aspirus Keweenaw Hospital, Aspirus will transition Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital to a rural health clinic, which will provide services that better match local needs in a community that has changed dramatically in recent years. Effective April 20th, 2024, hospital and emergency services will be replaced by a robust suite of outpatient-only services the community depends on. Currently, Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital serves just one inpatient a day on average. Some days, there are no inpatients." End quote. This press release was the only information released to the public and was taken down from their website soon afterward. No further comment was ever given. Local 3 has reached out to Aspirus dozens of times for their input, with no luck. They have never gotten back to us. According to State Senator McBroom, Aspirus was in a tough spot when it came to their Ontonagon property. As the press release indicated, the hospital was underperforming due to dwindling patient numbers and the high cost of bringing in doctors and nurses to staff the emergency room.
I understand some of where Aspirus is coming from a completely practical standpoint. They can't run it for free. And there are many days where the hospital didn't see people, the emergency room didn't see people, and they were spending nearly $2 million a year on flying doctors in so that they were available. So I understand it was a difficult situation, but why did they continue to tell everybody they were going to do a big expansion there? Why couldn't they have done some additional notifications? What about stretching out to this new federal program for rural emergency departments? When we finally did manage to have a conversation about this, and Congressman Bergman was able to get them to the table, all they told us was, well, we're not eligible for that. but they didn't really provide us with a lot of understanding of why they weren't. And certainly Congressman Bergman would have been open to, well, what changes do you need to see in this so that you would be eligible? But there didn't seem to be a genuine interest at that point. So it's very frustrating because I want to be understanding of the impracticalities they were experiencing that drove them to this, but they never operated as a partner. They never reached out for any partners, whether it was in the community, the state, or the federal, to help figure this problem out. It's just simple, here, take it. This is what we're doing. And this is what's really frustrating, particularly in light of some of the economic activities that we seem to be on the cusp of with Highland Copper and White Pine. To not have this facility there able to take care of people is a major hindrance towards future economic development in that area, as well as just a hindrance to good overall health care for the people who live there.
What's at issue is the abrupt turnaround of Aspirus's commitment to Ontonagon. Just 2 years ago, Aspirus pledged $15.8 million to build a brand new hospital and emergency room in Ontonagon. The pace of the closure, giving only 60 days notice of closing, the lack of communication, and the denials by Aspirus when asked if a closure was imminent. 4 weeks after the announced closure, after repeated attempts by local officials to set up a meeting with Aspirus fell on deaf ears, U.S. Congressman Jack Bergman stepped in and began appearing on the written request for a meeting. Sure enough, Aspirus was then willing to set up a meeting with Sheriff Rantala, Mike Coker, and the president of Aspirus's UP operations. The meeting yielded very few answers. However, when asked about the denials about closing, according to Coker, Aspirus said the decision to close the hospital was made the day before the announcement, on a Sunday. Another question that was answered was why did they not seek REH status, or Rural Emergency Hospital designation, a federal program designed to assist rural hospitals in keeping their emergency rooms open. Aspirus claimed Ontonagon Hospital did not qualify for this program, but failed to explain why. And so Ontonagon is left without a critical care facility. A lot more questions, no real answers, a frightened community, and an hour's drive to the nearest emergency room. A ribbon of asphalt filled with uncertainty. In Ontonagon, John Truitt, Local 3 News. Up next, I take a look at life in a town without emergency care. In part 3 of our investigation into the closing of Aspirus Ontonagon Hospital, I look into how the people of Ontonagon are coping with the mental anguish of losing their emergency department. The closing of Ontonagon's hospital has forced the residents of this small town to live in fear, with very little peace of mind.
I never ever saw this coming. And we all feel blindsided. We were just in shock when they made the announcement that in 60 days they would be closing, and no further comment. And I don't think any of us saw it happening. We're just devastated, feeling very betrayed and just devastated.
It made me feel pretty bad because we got a lot of health problems. Everybody got a lot of health problems. And we need people around, need a hospital, we need emergency room, need everything. Yeah. It's like hurting everybody. Yeah. It's like, what's everybody gonna do? Go next village, next hospital? Everybody's gonna be hurting.
It's just unthinkable. I just don't know how they could do it. And then it's a kick in the teeth having them take $30 million up to Larium in the Keweenaw. Then again, right after that, $300 million to the St. Luke's facilities over Duluth. I just think it's so sad. I just don't know what anybody's going to do. I really don't. It just really scares me.
And they were also filled with anger about the way Aspirus shut down their hospital. They were notified through a press release, giving just 60 days notice with absolutely no communication from Aspirus since. Ontonagon was founded in 1843 and has had a hospital since the 1880s. Aspirus took over in 2007 as their first hospital in Michigan. Village manager William DuPont feels that being given such short notice was unfair.
That's one thing that Aspirus, I feel like they should have given us more time to get things in place to save people. And this whole, we only had a 2-week prep or 3-week prep, whatever it was, to figure this out, we're going to be done in 3 weeks. That's not a great time frame to set up life-saving systems, I'll say.
The closing of the hospital, especially the emergency room, will undoubtedly have implications well beyond health care. DuPont says that this single event will change the personality and the face of his town.
And so I do see a shift going to more vacation homes, more Airbnbs. I definitely see a shift going to more of a touristy town, which is good and bad. I mean, at some point, though, you need residents to live here to support the businesses all the time.
It may seem like a lost cause, but some lawmakers are not giving up. I spoke to Senator Ed McBroom on his way to Lansing.
And I think that there's still opportunities, finding somebody else who's willing to do it. Political pressure on Aspirus, but to a large extent, a lot of these options are coming very late to the table because Aspirus didn't give everybody a heads up they were doing this until the last minute. It's certainly something that Congressman Bergman and I have discussed, is how other states have a 6-month notification law. That we definitely need to do that in Michigan, but that's not going to help us with Ontonagon right at this moment.
With thousands of tourists enjoying the Porcupine Mountains to hazardous jobs like logging and mining, and with an average population over the age of 60, Ontonagon residents feel an emergency room is crucial to the survival of their community. Once again, village manager William DuPont.
There's a lot of older people here. There's a lot of retired people. There's a lot of people on Social Security. A lot of folks that have owned their house for a long time. And I know some of them are probably thinking they don't want to stay here anymore because there isn't an ER available, and I think that's just shame.
One of the most disturbing realities of this situation is that many elderly residents will be forced to move away or live in constant fear. Ontonagon native Cheryl Sundberg wants to stay in her home, but questions the safety of remaining.
No, I don't want to move. I don't want to leave here, but I want a chance to survive if something bad happens, that I can get to medical emergency care in a reasonable amount of time to have my best chances of survival, and I think everybody in the community deserves that.
One thing is certain, though, Aspirus is not reopening the Ontonagon Hospital emergency room anytime soon. And so, the good people of Ontonagon will be forced to make the hour-long drive to the nearest emergency facility, praying through each mile that they make it on time. In Ontonagon, John Truitt, Local 3 News.